something in the cave. There's something in there. Rasta Hunter Edward reporting. We went to the tight caverns. We found it's the Zenith, unmatched. Reluctant to grow. Requesting extraction. It's just me left. Please. There's a demon down here. Zamuza. Zenith species.
There's something in the cave. The Tide Island was a very, very early Frontier exclusive area, introduced back in the blissfully faraway time of 2011. Boasting beautiful beachsides, a dense jungle with all manner of insects and thick canopies of leaves, it really was quite a beautiful place. Thing is, however, is that further inland is a hole in the ground, and it's in this hole where we find our Zenith of the day. Tucked away in the darkness and stone is one of the most popular Frontier monsters of all time, Taikun Zamuza. Seriously, it topped out a ton of popularity polls back in the day. People love this crab. And the interesting thing about this little guy is that we never saw a G-rank version in all the years he's been around. Imagine our shock then when one day, almost 8 years after the base version was introduced, the Frontier devs come screaming out of the crack den covered in blood and with not just a G-rank, but a Zenith of this funky little crab fired up and ready to go. The base Taikun Zamuza was an interesting fight for those of us just starting out. You'd face off against this enormous mound of mossy rock that would smash you around with hammer arms and heavy movements. As you proceeded throughout the fight, parts of this rocky shell will detach, filling the arena with dust and smoke, and when it clears, you'll start to see the bright orange shell of the crab poke through. After enough damage is done and enough parts are broken, you'll be treated to a short cutscene of the crustacean crashing through the floor and you'd fall down into a deeper part of the cavern. You'd rinse and repeat, and with some additional attacks thrown in, and a second cutscene will start, showing the inside of the fully exposed orange shell glowing with blue energy. When you fall down to the very bottom of this cave, you'll be greeted with the true form of Taikun, that of an electric blue, lightning-wielding crab with 2 picks for claws. It'll scuttle around, blast you with electricity, and all around be a general fast nuisance, and it was an amazing concept that really started to fade away with the power creep of later updates. Reason being is that no G-rank form existed to keep the little critter relevant, and even if you fought it for fun, you'd end up killing it before you get any of those cinematics. So now the Zenith is here instead, and scaled up to our power level. And of course, it does very little of that. You see, Taikun was a beast that was another later Zenith, launching around the same time as that of Zenith Harudemerugu, and if you recall in that video, I mentioned there seemed to be something lacking. Something that wasn't quite as special as some of the earlier introductions like Torrecles or Kezu. I'm of the opinion that these Zeniths were planned, but the likelihood of shutdown was becoming more and more possible, and it meant that they were either rushed or just not as fleshed out as we would have liked. It's a dreary way to start the video, I'm sure, but we've got to be normal about this here, and don't get me wrong, I love the monster itself, so getting more of it was always a plus. Instead, Taikun took itself down to 2 phases, a partially rock-covered bruiser with no element to speak of that wields 1 scythe claw and 1 hammer claw, and then it will transform into its electrified, greased-up lightning on a Sunday afternoon elemental form. We'll go over each form's attacks, then we'll touch on the Zenith body part as there's some good part break stuff here. The rock form at G-Rank 200 has 3 scripted attacks to note, and you'll always be greeted with the first. The arms go up and the hammer claw slams forward, then to Taikun's right backside, and then will repeat. Each slam will send out a wave of Zenith tremor and is very easily telegraphed as it starts to descend, so it's a simple case of not greeting the moment you see the shellfish. Good way to start building up gauges and armor skills too, and from here is where the actual fight starts. Taikun, much like many Zeniths, is incredibly reactive to your distance. Zenith monsters for the majority of the time are designed to be fought up close and personal, and they throw a massive fit when you bugger off to do something as presumptuous as heal or run away. Taikun knows this, and will spend a lot of its power trying to chuck you away like a booted up Mario Sunshine instead. The first of these attacks is a combo move. The hammer fist will come down twice, again with tremors on each impact, and then will slowly turn itself in a large spin move. Now these tremors are designed to set you up for this final smack after the spin, whereby you'll go flying, with no exaggeration, to the other side of the shitting arena. The other fastball special it throws at you is an uppercut that has so much wind up you might as well get an invite on Microsoft Teams for it, since Zamuza has to slowly back up before flinging the hammer into the air and following up with a devastating punch. Your tell for this attack to dodge is when the hammer fist hits the ground behind the crab, and as long as you aren't rolling to your right, you'll be fine. But why am I mentioning this now? Is it true for a lot of Zeniths that they'll throw out some evil attacks at distance? Sure. But why in this instance? Well, in this instance, it's an absolutely rotten combo. When you're at a distance from the crab, 9 times out of 10 it'll close the gap by holding the hammer claw in front of it, then following up with a swing when it runs forward to you. The hammer claw itself seems to push through any and all hyper armor and will knock you on your butt to be spiked by the follow-up swing. And even then, if you manage to guard it, you'll likely be stuck in the same animation and clobbered from the side. Even then, with all the distance you get thrown back, you'll often be sat there with your arse in the wall and the camera in a nursing home. It is profoundly irritating to contend with, and the double combo of the uppercut into punch is incredibly powerful, so you need to prioritize this as one to learn. Your next attack is a scripted sequence. Taikun will leap into the air like its standard slam attack, except it'll take a bit longer to land, and will always do so in the middle of the arena. It'll then rear its arm up and slam down with the fist, sending out an area-wide tremor. The funny thing about this move is it's not a particularly damaging attack really, and it's also incredibly well telegraphed. No. The threat comes from this. You're back out of the room, you've lost your ongoing armor skill buffs, no monster, no bitches, and no future. I've never seen a monster tell me to fuck right the way off quite in the same way that Taikun Zamuza does. After this absolute reading for filth, it's business as usual for the rest of the phase, until the very end where you'll get this awkward looking topple. It never interrupts any animations, just happens after a move is complete and the damage threshold hit. See what I mean about something being slightly off with this guy? Anyways, Taikun flies into the air and spins into the ground, disappearing, after which the floor of the cavern will light up with electrical energy in a line. Steer clear of that line since it's a landing light to mark where the dude will come rocketing in, all gussied up in a new fresh electrifying coat of paint. The second phase still comes with the aforementioned uppercut, the jump slam, but loses the slam spin move. What it does gain, however, is the addition of the lethal Zenith Thunderblight status. That isn't all, however, because it's here where we see the true appearance of the Zenith body part, the 2 wicked scythe-like claws. We get 3 moves introduced here, and I think they're all noteworthy. The first is the spin. Taikun will raise its right arm and then will end up Beyblading itself in place before charging towards you. This attack repeats 3 times overall before landing with a crash. All you have to do is get your familiarity with the timing down and you're golden. And yes, it is a bit of a cop-out piece of advice, but there's no visual cue to give you an idea unless you're far away and see it start to move. This attack will often be the first move you see after the phase change, but the one to pay attention to is the static shock. Taikun builds up static electricity on its claw before slamming it into the ground, causing a large explosion of thunder. This attack will inflict Zenith Thunderblight, so dodging at the right time or, failing that, resistances are super important here to avoid an instacart. Your tell for this attack is as the claw slowly comes down, it'll raise ever so slightly before the explosion itself. It seems very minuscule as a tell, but it'll be very obvious once you know to look for it, let me tell you. Here, as a bit of fun, is where we also see the repercussions of the Zenith break. As you might have guessed, it's the 2 claws. Worth noting that whilst you can't seem to break them in the first mode, all damage still carries over, meaning that it's a quick break in most cases the moment it sheds its shell. Breaking the claws will mean that the static shock attack causes some severe recoil for Taikun, throwing the crab onto its back for a nice topple. It is very worth your time to aim for the claws when you can. The attack from distance changes a bit too. It's instead a tunneling pincer attack that causes Zenith Thunderblight, but it is a little bit easier to avoid. The trade-off with this ease is that it's a bit more deadly with Zenith Thunderblight, so be careful. We move on from here to G rank 400. There's a single change in both phases. The main change that you see is the uppercut attack can now be done from a neutral stance rather than requiring a backup before being thrown, and this continues in Thunder mode also. The second new attack is a 180 strafe. Taikun spins around your hunter to approach them from behind and will follow up with a stab once the movement is finished and then another swing. Get ready to roll the moment it stops moving, and make sure to follow with your camera when learning this attack, as eventually you'll get so used to it you won't even need to look. those are all the additions at G rank 400. Again, being a later Zenith, you aren't going to see too many massive adjustments as the levels go up, but it makes things a lot simpler for us here. The gear itself was pretty nifty, as we'll take a look at that since there's no changes at G rank 600, sporting the same ceaseless Zenith skill that we saw often on Harudo gear. As a reminder, this gave a large boost to affinity as well as your critical hit modifier, meaning you're looking at 90% extra power on crit hits with some setups. Finally, a single new attack at G rank 800. It's a modified version of the static shock move from 400, but instead starts with a quick pincer attack and impacts the two lightning orbs together laterally rather than vertically. It's the same sort of timing. Whilst you'll often get tripped by the first swipe, you'll be able to pick yourself up in more than enough time to follow the roll up. Your tell here is once again when the orbs move ever so slightly backwards before impacting. The final impressive thing about this monster is that Zenith Taikun is an absurdly tanky beast, posting some disgusting HP pools. To give you a perspective for this, Zenith Rukodura sports the highest natural HP at G rank 800, with an impressive 375,000 effective HP. This is Taikun's HP value at G rank 600, and it maxes out at 500,000 hit points, the largest health pool of all Zeniths before we start getting into what comes next. It's going to be a real war of attrition taking this guy down, and it'll demand your full and utmost attention to conquer. But that is the final crab of the bunch. Zenith Taikun Zamuza is always going to have a special place in my heart for what an inventive and fun concept it is at the base form, and the fact we got a last hurrah from one of the most beloved frontier monsters of the bunch is a good thing to me. Whilst it doesn't rock my socks off in the same way as other Zeniths, I'm still glad I got to see it. And for now, we approach the final full Zenith monster. Those of you who have followed the series so far know what's coming next, and it's going to be a good one, so subscribe and stick around for that. For now, Sira out.